Hey everyone. Welcome back to Belladarktales, the place where real darkness finds its voice. Before we get into tonight's stories, I want you to do something for me. Go ahead and close whatever extra tabs you have open. Turn off the lights if you can. And if you're brave enough, put on your headphones. Because tonight, we're going to a place that most people stop at without thinking twice. A place with buzzing fluorescent lights, empty parking lots, and the kind of silence that feels just a little too heavy for 2 in the morning. We're going to the gas station. It seems so ordinary, doesn't it? You pull up, you pump your gas, you grab a coffee, and you leave. But for the 3 people in tonight's stories, that routine stop became something they will never, and I mean never, be able to forget. 3 true stories. 3 gas stations. 3 nights that went completely, horribly wrong. Let's begin. This story was submitted to us by a man named Marcus. He's in his mid-30s now, works in logistics, and by his own description, he's not someone who scares easily. He grew up rough, worked hard, and built a life that didn't leave much room for fear. But he said that what happened to him on one particular Tuesday night in early November completely rewired something inside him. He said he hasn't worked a night shift since. Marcus was the overnight attendant at a gas station just off Route 9, about 12 miles outside a small town in rural Georgia. It was the kind of station that only existed because of the long stretch of highway nearby. No neighborhood around it, no other businesses for miles, just pine trees, blacktop, and the occasional long-haul truck rumbling through. He'd worked that shift for almost 2 years. Midnight to 6 in the morning, 5 nights a week. He said it was actually peaceful most of the time. A few regulars, a few truckers, the occasional lost tourist. He had his routine: check inventory, restock the coolers, wipe down the counters, watch whatever was on the small TV mounted behind the register. Easy money for boring work. But that Tuesday in November, something felt different from the moment he pulled into the parking lot to start his shift. He said it was hard to explain, not anything you could point to exactly. The lights were all on. The pumps were working. His coworker from the evening shift handed off without mentioning anything unusual. But Marcus said the air felt thick, like right before a storm rolls in, when everything goes quiet and still and the birds stop singing. That kind of wrong. He told himself he was being ridiculous. Clocked in, made himself a coffee, and settled in behind the register. By 2 in the morning, he'd had maybe 6 customers. A couple of truckers, a teenage girl who bought energy drinks and barely made eye contact, an old man in a Lincoln who paid cash for gas and nodded politely on his way out. Normal. Quiet. Nothing to worry about. And then, at 2:17 in the morning, he remembered the exact time because he glanced at the clock on the register when he heard the crunch of gravel outside. A car pulled into the lot and stopped at pump 7. Now, the layout of this gas station was pretty standard. 6 pumps in 2 rows, covered by a wide canopy with those bright white overhead lights. Then the convenience store itself, with large windows along the front so the attendant could see all the pumps clearly. Marcus had a clear line of sight to every single one of them. The car that pulled in at pump 7 was a dark blue or black sedan, older model. He couldn't make out the exact year from where he was sitting. It pulled in slowly. Too slowly, he thought. Most people swing in fast, especially truckers and late-night drivers who just want to get back on the road. But this car crept in like the driver wasn't sure where they wanted to stop. It sat there for a moment with the engine running. Then the engine cut off. And nobody got out. Marcus watched the car. 30 seconds passed. A minute. He could see through the windshield. Or at least he thought he could. but the angle of the overhead lights created a kind of glare that made it hard to see clearly into the car. He could just make out the shape of someone in the driver's seat, sitting perfectly still. He told himself the driver was probably on the phone, or maybe had dozed off on a long drive and was just taking a moment to collect themselves. Totally reasonable explanations. He went back to what he was doing, but he kept glancing up. 5 minutes passed. The driver still hadn't gotten out, hadn't pumped gas, hadn't come inside. Just sitting there. At pump 7. Engine off, lights off, perfectly still. Marcus picked up the intercom. Most gas stations have a speaker system at each pump, and pressed the button for pump 7. "Good evening. You need any help out there?" Silence. Not even static on the other end. He tried again. Same result. "Now," he said, he started to get that feeling. You know the one. The feeling that lives in the back of your neck and slowly spreads down between your shoulder blades. The feeling your body sends you when some ancient, animal part of your brain is saying, "Something is wrong here. Pay attention." He watched the car for another full minute. And then the driver's door opened. The man who stepped out was tall. Very tall. Marcus said he looked like he had to actually unfold himself to get out of the car. He was wearing dark pants, a dark jacket, and a baseball cap pulled down low. He moved around to the pump at a pace that Marcus described as deliberate. Not fast, not slow. Just deliberate. Like every step was planned. He picked up the nozzle, lifted it toward his gas tank, and then stopped. He turned his head and looked directly at the window where Marcus was sitting. Marcus said the man stared at him for what felt like a full 30 seconds without moving. Just standing at the pump, nozzle in hand, face pointed directly at the window. Even with the cap pulled down, Marcus said he could feel the weight of those eyes. Marcus raised his hand, a small, neutral wave. The kind of thing you do when you're trying to act normal even though nothing feels normal. The man didn't respond. He turned back to the pump, inserted the nozzle, and started pumping gas. Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Okay," he thought. "Weird guy. Whatever. He's just pumping gas." He watched the numbers on the pump scroll up. $3, $5, $8, and then the pump clicked off. The man pulled the nozzle out, replaced it on the pump. And then, instead of getting back in his car, he turned and started walking toward the store. Marcus felt his stomach tighten, but he told himself to relax. People come in to pay or grab something all the time. That's the job. The door opened with the little electronic chime it always made, and the man stepped inside. Up close, Marcus said, the man was even more unsettling. He was maybe 6'4", with a face that was just slightly off. Not deformed or disfigured, just off. Like something about the proportions wasn't quite right. The cap was still pulled low, but now Marcus could see his eyes clearly, pale, almost colorless, blinking slowly. The man didn't speak. He walked past the register, turned into the snack aisle, and disappeared from view. Marcus had a convex mirror mounted in the corner of the store, the kind that lets you see the aisles from the register. He angled himself to look at it. He could see the man standing at the far end of the snack aisle, not picking anything up, not looking at the shelves. Just standing there, facing the wall. "Hey, you finding everything okay?" Marcus called out. Nothing. No response. Marcus had a panic button under the counter, a direct line to dispatch, and for the first time in 2 years on this job, he rested his hand on it. About 30 seconds later, the man turned and walked back up the aisle toward the register. He placed a single item on the counter. A bottle of water. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a folded bill and set it down without making eye contact. Marcus rang it up. Made change. Slid the coins across the counter. The man picked up the water bottle and the change. And then he just stood there, at the counter, looking at Marcus. "Have a good night," Marcus said, keeping his voice as steady as he could. The man tilted his head slightly to one side, just a fraction, like a dog that's heard a strange sound, and then he spoke for the first and only time. His voice was low, almost too low, and he said, "You should lock the door after I leave." Marcus blinked. The man turned and walked out. Marcus watched him through the window as he walked past Pump 7, past his own car, and kept walking. Into the dark tree line at the edge of the lot. And disappeared. His car was still sitting at Pump 7. Marcus hit the panic button. He locked the front door. He stayed on the phone with the dispatcher, a woman named Carol who, bless her, stayed calm and kept him talking for the next 45 minutes until a sheriff's deputy arrived. They found the car at Pump 7. It was registered to a man from 3 counties over who had been reported missing 6 days earlier. There was no phone in the car. No wallet. No luggage. Just a gas station receipt on the passenger seat, from a different station, dated 4 days prior, and on the back of it, scrawled in heavy black pen, were 2 words. "He's outside." They searched the tree line. They searched the surrounding area. They found nothing. No sign of the man who'd walked off into the dark. Marcus quit the next morning. He said that to this day, he drives past that stretch of Route 9 sometimes. He has to for work. And every single time, he looks at the tree line as he passes. And sometimes, late at night, he thinks he sees something tall standing just inside the shadows between the pines, watching the road. The second story tonight comes from a woman named Priya. She submitted it to us about a year ago with one request. She asked that we tell it exactly as it happened, without softening the details, because she said the most terrifying thing about that night was how ordinary it all seemed at first. She wanted people to understand that horror doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just quietly closes in around you. Priya was 26 at the time. She just finished a work conference in Charlotte, North Carolina, and was driving back home to Knoxville. It was about a 6-hour drive, and she'd started late, left the hotel around 11 at night because the conference wrapped up with a dinner, and she was one of the organizers, so she couldn't leave early. She was maybe 3 hours into the drive when she realized she needed gas. The gauge was dipping past the quarter mark, and she was somewhere in the mountains of eastern Tennessee, that stretch of I-40 where the exits thin out and the landscape is nothing but dark ridges against a darker sky. She took the next exit and followed the small blue fuel sign down a 2-lane road for about 1.5 miles. The gas station appeared in the darkness like a little island of light, a small, older-looking place with 4 pumps and a convenience store that had a hand-painted sign above the door. It looked like it had probably been there since the 1980s and hadn't changed much. But it was open. The lights were on. And that was all that mattered to Priya at 1:45 in the morning. She pulled up to the nearest pump and got out. The night air was cold up here, she could see her breath, and the only sounds were the hiss of the wind through the ridgeline trees and the faint hum of the station's lights. No other cars. No other people visible. Just her and the gas pump and the quiet. She started pumping, scrolling through her phone to pass the time. It was taking a while. The old pump was slow, and after about 2 minutes she looked up and noticed a truck parked on the far side of the lot. It was backed into a space near the edge of the property, away from the pumps, facing the road. A big, dark pickup truck. She almost didn't notice it at first because it blended into the shadows. But once she saw it, she couldn't look away from it. Because the engine was running. She could see the faint exhaust curling up in the cold air from the tailpipe. Just sitting there. Engine running. Lights off. She told herself it was probably just a trucker taking a nap before getting back on the road. Or maybe someone who'd pulled over to make a call. She kept pumping. A minute later, she noticed the store's glass door was slightly ajar. Not open wide, just cracked. Maybe 2 or 3 inches. Light was spilling out through the gap and she could see the store was empty from where she stood. She finished pumping, replaced the nozzle, and decided to go inside to get a coffee and use the bathroom before getting back on the road. As she walked toward the store, she passed close enough to the parked truck to see that the cab was empty. Nobody inside. The running engine now felt less like a comfort and more like a question. She pushed open the door and went in. The inside of the store smelled like old coffee and pine cleaner. A country radio station was playing low behind the counter, something slow and twangy that felt out of step with the unease creeping up Priya's spine. She grabbed a large coffee, a pack of gum, and went to the counter. Nobody was there. She looked around. No one in the aisles. She called out, "Hello?" and heard nothing back except the radio. She waited a minute, thinking the attendant was in the back. Then she waited another minute. She called out again. Silence. She was about to set her things on the counter and just leave cash when she noticed something that stopped her cold. There was a phone on the counter. A cell phone, cracked screen, older model, lying face up next to the register. And it was showing an active call. The timer was running. Someone had dialed the number and set the phone down, and the call was still connected. She looked at the screen. The number wasn't saved as a contact. Just a raw number. And she noticed, with a strange kind of sick feeling, that the area code wasn't local. It wasn't from Tennessee at all. And then she heard it. From somewhere in the back of the store, past the coolers, past the door marked employees only, a sound. Low and rhythmic. It took her a second to identify it, and when she did, the coffee cup nearly slipped from her hand. It was breathing. Deep, slow, deliberate breathing. The kind of breathing a person does when they're trying very hard to control it. When they're trying not to make a sound. When they're frightened. Priya's brain made the decision before she did. She was out the door in 4 steps. She was 10 feet from her car when she heard the gravel crunch behind her. She didn't look back. She got in, locked the doors, and started the engine in one motion. She said her hands were shaking so badly she missed the ignition the first time. Second try, the engine caught. She threw it in reverse. That's when she saw him in her rearview mirror. A man was standing at the back of her car. He'd come out from somewhere, the side of the building, she thought, or maybe from behind another car she hadn't noticed. He was wearing a red flannel shirt and jeans, and he had something in his right hand. Something long. She didn't look long enough to identify it. She pulled out fast, swung wide around him, and hit the road. She drove 2 miles before she trusted herself to grab her phone. She called 911 and told them everything: the station, the running truck, the employee phone, the man in the flannel. She said the dispatcher's voice shifted when she gave the name of the station. A very slight shift, but she caught it. The dispatcher told her to keep driving and said units were responding. 3 weeks later, Priya got a call from a detective. He didn't tell her everything, but he told her enough. The store attendant, a 61-year-old man named Gerald, had been found in the back room. He was alive, but badly beaten. He managed to dial a number on the phone before whoever had broken in through the back had gotten to him. He'd set the phone down and hidden himself to survive. The man in the flannel was a convicted felon who had been living out of that pickup truck for 2 weeks, watching the station. He'd attacked Gerald sometime in the 30 minutes before Priya pulled in. He was arrested 4 days later, 60 miles away. The detective told Priya something else, too. Something that she said she thinks about every single time she stops for gas on a long drive. He said, "If you waited at that counter just a couple more minutes, he would have come out of the back. And you would have been alone with him. And there are no cameras in that store." She hung up, sat in her car in her work parking lot, and cried for 20 minutes. Because she'd almost waited. She'd almost given him those extra minutes. She said the only thing that saved her was the sound of someone trying desperately not to breathe. The third and final story tonight is the one that made me hesitate before including it. Not because I doubted it, but because of how it ends. Or rather, because of how it doesn't. This story was sent to us by a man named Daniel. He told it on behalf of himself and his wife, Clara, because Clara still has trouble talking about it. She's seen a therapist twice a week since it happened. Daniel said she sleeps with the lights on now, every night, without exception. This happened about 4 years ago. Daniel and Clara were driving back from a weekend trip, a little anniversary getaway to a bed and breakfast up near the Virginia border. It was late Sunday night, close to 3 in the morning, and they were about 2 hours from home in North Carolina. Clara was asleep in the passenger seat. Daniel was driving, running on caffeine and the particular determination that takes over when you're close enough to home to not want to stop. But the fuel light had been on for a while, and he knew he needed to pull over. He took an exit he never used before, a rural exit he only took because it was the first one with a fuel sign after he noticed the gauge was critically low. He followed the sign down a winding road through what felt like nothing, no houses, no streetlights. Just the dark shapes of hills on either side and his headlights cutting a small cone of visibility in front of him. The gas station appeared after about 3 miles. It was a small place. 3 pumps, a low-slung building with a flat roof, vending machines against the outside wall. The lights were on inside and the open sign in the window was lit up in red. Daniel pulled in. He didn't want to wake Clara, so he slipped out quietly and went to the pump. He swiped his card. The pump accepted it. He started filling the tank. While the gas pumped, he looked around the lot. One other vehicle, a silver minivan, parked on the side of the building, near what looked like a back entrance. Not at a pump. Just parked. He looked into the store through the wide front window. He could see shelves of merchandise, a cooler along the back wall, the glow of the register area. He couldn't see anyone inside, but the lights were on and the open sign was lit, so he figured the attendant was in the back somewhere. He finished pumping, replaced the nozzle. His card had already processed, so technically he could have just gotten in the car and left. But he realized he was parched, really thirsty, and the drive was still 2 hours. He decided to go in and grab something to drink. He cracked the car door and told Clara he'd be back in 2 minutes. She barely stirred. He went inside. The store was completely silent. No radio. No hum of background noise except the refrigeration units along the back wall. He went to the coolers, grabbed a sports drink, and went to the register. Nobody there. He waited. He cleared his throat loudly. Called out hello. Nothing. He looked at the register more carefully and noticed something a little strange. There was a receipt in the printer, not fully ejected, just partway out, like it had printed and then stopped. He could see the top few lines. He leaned forward to read it. It was a transaction receipt. Date, time, item purchased. The time on the receipt was 2:58 a.m., Daniel looked at his phone. It was 3:04 a.m. 6 minutes ago, someone had bought something in this store. 6 minutes ago, there was a person standing right here at this register. He looked around the empty store. And then he heard it. From directly above him. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate footsteps crossing the ceiling above the store. Moving from one end of the building to the other. He froze. He looked up at the ceiling. Standard drop ceiling, white tiles, fluorescent lights. But above it, clearly, unmistakably, something was walking. The footsteps stopped directly above the register. Above him. And stayed there. Daniel set his drink on the counter, put a $5 bill next to it. He said later he didn't even know why he did that, some kind of autopilot, and walked out of the store as calmly as he could manage. He got in the car, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot. He was halfway down the winding road back to the highway when Clara stirred and asked him, half asleep, if he'd gotten his drink. He said, "We are not stopping. Go back to sleep." His voice must have told her something, because she sat up straight and looked at him. Then she turned around and looked through the rear windshield. And she screamed. Daniel hit the brakes. "What? What is it?" Clara was pressed against her door, pointing through the back glass. Her voice when she answered him was barely a whisper. She whispered, "There is someone standing in the middle of the road behind us." Daniel looked in the rearview mirror. The road behind them was dark. His taillights threw a red wash back about 30 feet. And right at the edge of that red light, just barely visible, was a figure. Standing in the center of the road. Not moving. Just standing. He couldn't make out any details at that distance in that light. Just the shape. A person-shaped shape in the darkness, perfectly still, facing their car. He drove. He didn't slow down again until he hit the on-ramp for the highway, and even then he barely touched the brakes. The next day, when he'd calmed down enough, Daniel tried to look up the gas station. He remembered the road, the exit number, roughly where it had been. He even found it on a satellite map. But when he searched for the business listing, what came up stopped him cold. The gas station had closed. According to public records, it had ceased operations over a year before Daniel and Clara stopped there. The county had actually cited it for abandonment, broken permits, unpaid utilities. The building was technically vacant property. He told himself the listing was outdated. Records get things wrong. The lights were on. The pump accepted his card. The open sign was lit. He drove out there a week later to prove to himself that it was just a records error. The building was empty. Plywood over the windows. A padlock on the front door. Weeds growing through the cracks in the pavement. The pumps were still there. Rusted. Clearly not operational. He walked up to the pump he'd used. The digital display was dark, the screen cracked. He looked down at the ground near where he'd stood. There was an old receipt on the ground, partially decomposed by rain and weather. He picked it up anyway. Most of it was unreadable. But the time stamp at the top was still legible. 2:58 a.m. He stood in that empty lot for a long time, trying to make sense of it. Trying to find the explanation that would let him sleep. He never found it. Clara still sleeps with the lights on. And Daniel has a rule now, a hard rule, one he does not break, that he will never, under any circumstances, stop for gas after midnight. He said he doesn't know what was in that building that night. He doesn't know whose footsteps those were, or who, or what, was standing in that dark road behind them. He said the thing that haunts him most isn't what he saw. It's the $5 bill he left on the counter. And the fact that when he went back to that empty, locked, abandoned building a week later, the bill was gone. 3 gas stations. 3 nights. 3 people who stopped somewhere they thought was safe, and discovered that safety, after midnight, is a very fragile thing. I want to thank Marcus, Priya, and Daniel for trusting us with their stories. These are the kinds of experiences that people carry quietly, sometimes for years, before they can say them out loud. We're honored to give those voices a place to be heard. If you're watching this right now, maybe it's late where you are. Maybe you've got a long drive coming up. Maybe you're already a little on edge, a little more aware of that feeling in the back of your neck. Good. That feeling has kept a lot of people safe. Stay alert. Trust your instincts. And if something feels wrong, don't be the person who talks themselves out of it. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and let us know. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We release new stories every week, and there are plenty more nights where these came from. And if something has happened to you, something you can't quite explain, something that still keeps you up at night, share it with us. We read every submission. Our email is belladarktales@gmail.com. Your story might be the next one told. Until then, drive safe. And maybe fill up your tank before it gets dark.